I don't want no oil spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet. My name is Joe DeMar, and I am here with my inimitable co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and I have to start with an apology to Rebecca Wood.
Did you like the dramatic pause beforehand?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
good. It was very effective.
Thank you.
But I'm apologizing because last week I called you my inimicable co-host, which isn't actually a word.
Right.
But if it were a word, it would be a bad thing because inimical is like really bad, but inimitable is really good. So.
Well, you know, I'm a woman of extremes.
And so we are going to bring you an extremely good show here called For a Green Future.
Yes.
For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in the ways that affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your family, and the geese that are flying over your house right now, and the birds and the bees and the fish and the trees and pretty much everybody and everything, because we're all together on this wonderful planet that we call Earth. And we got a good show lined up for you today. For the next, it's actually going to be the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to be talking, just chatting. And during this time, please call up at 1-877-909-1007. And that's 1-877-909-1007 at any time, because we'd love to hear from you. This is a call-in show. So we're just going to chat for a little bit here, and then we have a guest. His name is Jim Witter. He's with the Wood County Park District, and he's going to be talking about Carter Historic Farms out there on Carter Road in Bowling Green, Ohio, they had a big festival yesterday that I went to, which is very nice. Then we'll hear from our advertisers and patrons, and we're going to have another announcement about patrons. So Josh, be ready with that fanfare button today. Then Rebecca, you will be talking to us about what exactly, Rebecca?
Apples.
Apples, yes, a very timely subtopic. Then ecological news. We got some pretty important, dramatic environmental news to talk about. And as I said, hopefully at some point we'll be hearing from you at 877-909-1007. So what I wanted to start talking about this show is something that has really bugged me during this past week, because as I'm sure everyone knows about Hurricane Ian that came and walloped Florida, like demolished huge chunks of it. And what we have now is a bunch of conservative politicians who are saying now is not the time to politicize this tragedy.
Well, then they ought not to politicize it.
Right, and exactly. By saying
yeah.
that, they politicize it.
Like, who was politicizing? Well, okay, a lot of people, especially Democrats, well, no sane person likes Ron DeSantis, and his immigrants and his abortion crap, and, So I get that, but, not every everybody in Florida deserves to have terrible hurricane-y things happen to them. I don't think.
Well, no, I mean, nobody deserves to have their house destroyed and their livelihood, wrecked. I mean, it's a terrible tragedy, but it's a tragedy.
And Ron DeSantis is not hurting from this. Let me just point out, if
Yeah.
it's meant as divine punishment, it hit everybody in the world but him, the person who actually did the crime.
Yeah, it's.
I
no.
know some people in Florida voted for him, but still, it was just very sort of indiscriminate, as nature will be with its damage.
Right, and of course, it's very famous that he voted against hurricane aid for New Jersey and New York, but now that Florida needs it, he's like all on board with it. But the point I wanted to make about this is that politicizing global warming is what has kept Republicans in office for the past 20 years.
Indeedy.
In fact,
They got no business criticizing anybody else for politicizing stuff.
right, and so it's very hypocritical to say don't politicize a global warming catastrophe like this one. And it was way back in the 1990s that I was working on global warming before the 2000 election, and I hosted. That's when I was in the Western Lake Erie Sierra Club, and we hosted a fellow by the name of Ross Gelbspan, who wrote one of the earliest and best of the Hey, Global Warming is Coming books. It's called The Heat is On. And
Ooh, catchy.
yeah, it was catchy, it had a nice cover, and it pretty much laid out, back in the 1990s, he pretty much said, this is, if we don't do anything, this is what's going to happen in the 2020s, and, it's happening. And so, my point about that is, so we've known, and literally the only reason we didn't do anything to prevent it was political.
Yep.
Yeah, because the scientists are all in agreement. And in fact, even the market is in agreement, because wind and solar power are so cheap and so profitable that the free market has said, hey, we need to switch over to wind and solar, close down all these expensive coal plants and all these expensive nuclear plants. And oh man, has the market really spoken on nuclear, because everybody who's invested in nuclear has lost their shirts for the past 30 years. It bankrupted Westinghouse, one of the largest companies in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So the market has spoken, the people have spoken, because the vast majority of people believe in global warming and actually want us to do something about it.
I don't think a lot of people understand how destructive it really is and how bad it really is going to be, though. I mean, if we don't do anything. I was with some friends the other day and they were like, oh, but I'm betting on nature. Well, that's a little bit like making somebody run a gauntlet, hitting them on the head with a club real hard and then saying, go on, buddy, I'm rooting for you,
Yeah, I mean,
Get up so I can hit you in the head with a club again. Come on, what's the matter with you?
yeah, I think the emotional response is every time something bad like Ian happens,
Yeah.
to kind of say, well, that's probably going to be the worst of it, right? And now
Yeah.
we're through. But actually, no.
Except look at the trend. It's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. What if this doesn't bottom out,
Right, Ian literally is just the beginning of this. So.
Yeah.
So these people that are saying don't politicize global warming at this point, climate change at this point, it's kind of like if way back at the beginning when they first discovered germ theory, way back when they first figured out, oh, hey, there's these little microorganisms in our drinking water and they're making us sick. Like if they were to deny that, if they were to say, no.
Oh, but they did. The guy who originally discovered that women tended to die in childbirth if the doctors washed their hands, and the doctors and nurses all washed their hands at the hospital, got fired, committed suicide.
Yeah, I mean, there was resistance to it, definitely. But
it was fairly brief compared to this climate change thing, though,
Right.
At least. They eventually were like, okay, maybe less women dying.
Right, I mean,
let's try the hand washing thing, okay.
Eventually science won out in that
Right,
case.
right.
I mean, because it just became so obvious to everybody, oh, we do what the scientists tell us and we die less.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Everyone likes dying less.
yeah, but now we've got this huge machine, this huge public relations machine that it's been documented and detailed. It's being funded by the fossil fuel industry. They're literally pumping billions into keeping us, doubting, to keeping us, it's that just that 1 degree of uncertainty that prevents you from doing anything, or voting people out who are climate deniers. And there's still climate deniers on the ballot today. It's kind of crazy. One thing I'm doing, I've mentioned before that I'm the co-chair of the Wood County Green Party, and we have just created a voters guide, and so we've been researching all the candidates, like on the state ballot and so forth. And there's some really insane people on the ballot, I have to tell you, and it's we don't hear about a lot of them, but
there was the famous song with the Greenham women's Commons women's encampment that they did an album, and Funboy 3 did, no, was that Funboy 3? Somebody did a song that called "The Lunatics Have Taken Over the Asylum." I think it was Funboy 3.
Okay, yeah, well
But it becomes more and more literal with every passing year, it seems like. It's not even a joke anymore, It's not a metaphor. We really are electing people of questionable mental stability at this point.
Yeah, and the reason is that those are the people who will pass bills and laws like House Bill 6.
Or really just sociopaths pretending to believe all this crazy crap,
Right, who don't actually care what they're voting for as long as they stay in office and make their money. And so my point is that this is the time to politicize global warming. I mean, this going into an election cycle right here, and literally your vote can make a difference in terms of whether we survive or not. In terms of
apologies to everyone, by the way, who was mentally ill, but not enough to believe that crap.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're going to vote, you have a vote coming up in November that could determine whether or not we continue to go down this suicidal path that we're on. And this is not a partisan claim, because there are Democrats on the ballot right now who are pushing for things like a hydrogen economy based on methane, which is like that's global warming right there.
Basically.
And carbon captured storage, which that's global warming because it doesn't work, and they've been working on it for 40 years and still can't do it. So it's not a partisan thing, but it is a survival thing. All right, we got to stop putting these people in office that put the policies in place that keep us hooked to the fossil fuel industry and the nuclear industry. So that's what I wanted to start ranting about this episode. And so if you want to get on board and let us know what you think about this, give a call at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. We are poised and ready on the phone lines to put you on the air. So other than that, it's a really nice time of year. There's Rebecca and I on the way in, we saw hundreds of Canada geese there.
Many goosies.
Yeah, and the birds are definitely full on migration right now. I was watching the news and the Weather Channel, or the meteorologists were saying that right now they're getting that effect on the weather radar caused by thousands of birds, that are flocking and heading south, coming off the Great Lakes. It was kind of cool that it made like this big hemisphere. He was like, "Yep, that's birds. It's not clouds, that's birds." So, and this situation with Ian. One other point I wanted to make about it is that it is affecting millions and millions of people. I have a sister who lives in North Carolina, and she didn't get hit by the storm, but her power's been out for 4 days now. and no sign of when it's going to get turned back on. And she's somebody who raises rabbits. That's a
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure how that came to be, but rabbits are an important part of their diet. I mean, they raise them and they eat them, but they've got this big freezer full of rabbit that hasn't had any power now for 4 days, and so people are getting hit where it hurts. They're getting hit economically by global warming. I mean, it's very direct. My sister's rabbit cache would not be in peril if Ian wasn't this climate change, this global warming enhanced storm that caused her power to be out, even though she didn't get hit by the storm.
And it ain't no sense having all those bunnies die for nothing because nobody can even eat them.
Yeah, that would be a terrible tragedy. Yeah. And so Republicans continuously talk about how everything is the economy. Well, people's economies, personal economies, are getting hammered by global warming. I mean, our heating bills are going up.
Everyone on Facebook is complaining about the heating bills.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
How bad they are this year.
Our electric bills are going up because they got to replace infrastructure all the time because it keeps getting knocked down by climate change, enhanced storms. And what the Republicans' response to this is, oh, hurricanes always happen. And yes.
And not like they have been lately. No, they weren't always like this. It was like one big hurricane a year, maybe.
You're exactly. What global warming has caused is these super hurricanes, the Category 5s, the ones that dial up from like a tropical storm to a Category 5 in a day and a half. That's...
Poor little Puerto Rico has not recovered from their last hurricane before they got slammed with this one.
Yes, exactly. And so if you care about the economy, you also need to get people out of office that are climate deniers.
Yes.
I know. So if you want to hang on to your home, to your savings, to your investments, to your retirement accounts, because things like these hurricanes also knock down stock markets, which costs you money. So we've gotten to the point where we can very clearly say global warming is making you poorer, you personally poorer. So if you want to protect your investments, if you want to protect your economic value, you've also got to help us stop global warming.
You don't like inflation now, wait till it's like $100 for a jug of water or something.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think that was pretty ranty.
It was, yes.
Yeah.
We ranted.
We
ranted.
Well, but it just bugs me that what really made me want to use this show and this morning's opening part to talk about this is the fact that these politicians said this. They said, "Oh, now is not the time to politicize global warming," and then all the media outlets repeated it. And all the armies of trolls,
like it actually meant something and was coherent.
Yeah, and all the trolls immediately started parroting it on all like at the C-SPAN call-in lines and on all the social media posting boards, and it's like it's just so obviously coordinated, and they use exactly the same phrases.
Right.
And that's when you realize, okay, there's money, there's a script behind this.
Yeah.
People are being told to say this, and I don't have billions of dollars, but I do have this show, and I'm going to use whatever I've got to combat this because it really needs to be combated if we want to survive as a society. I mean, if you want to just sort of ride a roller coaster that's like at the end of it's got like a little ramp and then off into the lake,
But it's like, okay, it's a complicated question. Like, people always argue about to what degree, what is the degree of culpability for people who did not contest or went along with destructive cult leaders, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Jones, Charles Manson, like people did horrible things, and we're clearly have some degree of guilt, but also we're clearly victims on some level,
Well, that is true. I mean, it is a mix of victimhood and culpability because con artists con people into hurting themselves essentially, and so to what degree do you blame the con artist? Then to what degree do you blame the person?
And hurting other people also, but also themselves, you know.
But I mostly blame the con artist.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd say they have the bulk of the responsibility there because they're doing it knowingly and consciously, whereas
And the thing is, they're not completely wrong. In the two-party system, there is this thing of let's not solve the problem. Let's just like use it for let's assign blame back and forth and use it to get somebody else elected, and then still not solve the problem.
yeah, that is a fundamental problem with having only two parties and no real competition with those parties, which we're also working on.
Yeah.
All right, but anyway, so now time to shift gears. Got the ranting done. So now it is also one important thing about nature.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, all right, I'm forewarned. But one important thing about liking the natural world and so forth is it is fun to get out and enjoy it. And there was a really fun event yesterday in Bowling Green at the Carter Historic Farms. They had their annual harvest festival there at the farm, and it's a working farm based on like 1930s technology, and they gave away free food and of stuff that they grew on the farm, and it was just a really good time. And I managed to snag an interview with the guy who organized it, and his name is Jim Witter. And so let's go ahead and play that, Josh. All right, well, hey there, and welcome to For a Green Future. Could you just tell people who you're with and where we are?
Yeah. I'm Jim Witter, the program coordinator here at the Wood County Parks, and we are at Carter Historic Farm at the Heritage Farm Fest.
Right, and actually you're standing here with a plate full of food, and where did all that food come from?
Yes. So I've been serving folks coming through the line, that a big part of the Farm Fest is the food, which is all grown and raised right here at the farm. And so, describing my plate here, we have brats. We do have pigs that come here seasonally. They grow here, have a great life, and then we consume them as part of the meal here at the Farm Fest. And then also we raise a heritage variety of corn, Jimmy Red corn. Then I've got a corn muffin that when it's made into muffins looks kind of like a purplish blue, as well as we have cream corn, mashed potatoes, and Harvard beets, which I'm excited about. We also grow those right here. So everything at the meal is provided from the farm staff, all the way from seeds to growing the plants, raising the animals. It's all here. So it's a great celebration of the history, Depression era history, as well as kind of agricultural life here in Wood County.
Right. So now this is a historic farm, meaning you farm and you grow things the way they did back you say about the Depression era?
Yeah, that's correct. And so it was different. Another kind of unique thing here is that we're using historic equipment, and we're trying to restore as much of that historic equipment as possible to put it into use. So we're doing everything from using heritage varieties they would have used during the Depression era, using equipment to both plant and harvest, those crops, including buckwheat, different types of corn varieties. And yes, even just the way that they farmed the rows, often with the corn, are kind of wider. And so different kind of modes of farming that was unique to the Depression era, to the 30s, compared to now the farming modern ways is completely different. Our staff that work here who are knowledgeable say that completely different. You have GPS in your tractors and air conditioning, and of course none of those things back in the Depression era, but still had your own types of kind of Depression era technology, your own, kind of that in-between period into from animals into mechanization. So definitely they had their technology of the time, but much different than today.
Right, and it was before a lot of the sort of chemicals and things we use today, right? It was sort of pre-herbicide, pesticide.
Right. It is true that what we raise here is organically grown as well. So, not some of the same kind of modern farming techniques, using a little bit more of those different methods of control of weeds and herbicide or different pests. So yeah, it is definitely a different way, and including some of our acreage that we're starting to kind of take and kind of plant more. That there can be a period of time when you're having the clover and kind of planting the clover and then kind of turning that into the soil and building up some of those nutrients. And so, yeah, it's definitely a lot of different ways of doing things here. That's different than on kind of a modern farm, being an historic farm.
Yeah. And so people can come here anytime, year round?
Yeah. So, yeah, a good question. People can come here to the farm grounds year round. You can walk around, take a look around. We have sheep, chickens, and seasonally pigs, usually from about kind of late spring into towards the mid-summer. And then we do also have open hours regularly, so that's Friday through Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. We'll have the Zimmerman School, one-room school, open as well, and we'll have those hours Friday through Sunday, 1 to 4, open for tours of the farmhouse as well as the farm grounds. So you can always come out here and visit. Not all the buildings might be open, but from Friday through Sunday during those afternoon hours, we also have staff that'll be here to show you around, to engage with about the history, as well as the kind of history of the Carter family, both generally to Wood County, and also to the family history here.
Yeah, all right, cool. And I noticed that the line's kind of backing up here, and you didn't get to finish your meal. So.
That's right. I see. Gonna get back at it.
Yeah, but this is a pretty big event. I mean, you got hundreds of people here. You must be pretty happy with the turnout.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah, we love to have this event and have people, coming out here and enjoy the farm and hopefully returning, making a connection here. So it's always great to see. A lot of fun.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Jim.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Yeah, and thank you folks for listening to the interview. And it's worth a visit out to places like Carter Historic Farms because it's a functioning farm. They grow lots and lots of food, and they do it organically, not because of their, some sort of philosophy behind it, but because they've just recreated farming the way it was before we went off the rails with chemicals and fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides. They're just sort of recreating it historically. And it's important to remember farming that way actually works. Okay, it can produce enough food for us to live on. And the people who push non-organic farming say, oh, but it can't produce enough, it's not as productive, blah blah blah. But two things to that. One, it's just about as productive, and in fact, in times of drought and things, it's actually more productive because organic farming techniques hold water in the soil better. So some years where you don't get a crop at all in our current chemically based system, you will get crops in a organic, in a soil based agricultural system. And two, 90% of what we grow is feed for our cattle that we're going to eat. And so, if we cut back a little bit on the meat and didn't have beef or some sort of meat product at every single meal, every single day, there'd be more than enough farmland to turn a whole bunch of it back to forest and to give us all that we need to eat. So it's all interconnected, and it's just a reminder, a very physical, very visible reminder that we don't have to do things the way we're doing them now. We can change and it will still work.
Right. Organic farming, not actually invented by communists. Your pioneer ancestors did it, baby dolls.
Right, yeah. Even your grandparents and great-grandparents, they did organic farming because that was the only kind of farming there used to be.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now, on to one of my favorite parts of the show, advertisers and patrons.
Woohoo!
Yay! 4 Great Futures brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's a bunch of ways you can find out what's going on. So the next big fun thing they do, you don't have to miss it. One is to go to their website. Go to wcparks.org. Another is to download their nifty app. Go to any app store and just search for WC Parks. And you can put that on your cell phone, and anytime you're wondering, what should we do this weekend? You could just check the app, and usually there's something fun going on. And you can call them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. That's the Wood County Park District. All right, and now, Josh, finger on the button. For Green Future is also brought to you by our patrons, and patrons are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com and they searched for Green Future. Up popped our wonderful page with all our wonderful levels of membership. And this week we want to thank Sean. Go ahead. Sean has joined the ranks of the patrons of For a Green Future at the $25 a month level.
All right.
So that's really great. Thank you, Sean, and thank you to all our wonderful patrons without whom we would be unable to bring you this show. And if we couldn't bring you this show, then we wouldn't be able to hear every week from Rebecca about an interesting little topic. What are you talking about this week, Rebecca?
I am again talking about apples, more or less as my way of wishing you all a belated Rosh Hashanah, because I am not very organized, and I sometimes tend to miss, large events until they're gone. So, especially if they happen between Sundays, as almost everything does. But yeah, so, Rosh Hashanah is a demonstration of the extreme cultural importance of apples in many different cultures, including it's traditional for Rosh Hashanah with honey, because I think you're supposed to eat something sweet in order to have a sweet New Year, is the idea. It's symbolic that way. But yeah, apples are the edible fruit produced by apple trees, which are in the genus Malus, which originated in Central Asia. We're talking Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Northwest China, which is just crazy to me. It's just it occurs to me every time I want to do one of these things, how much the story of domestic plants and animals is kind of the story of humans and how we developed and got different things from different places. They're from the wild apple on the east side of a set of mountains in China called the Malus sieversii, Sieversii, Sieversii. So there. It's in the rose family, as is, I believe, the pear and the quince. Also roses, also in the larger rose family. The apple that we all eat is called Malus domestica, but there are 7,500 known cultivars.
Wow.
There's a lot of different kind of apples, mostly because people use apples for a lot of different things. There's eating raw, there's cooking apples, there's cider apples. There's a bunch of different kind of apples. So yeah, the ones grown from seeds apparently tend to have less desirable traits to growers, and one assumes eaters. So almost all apples grown agriculturally are cultivars, meaning they graft different kind of apples onto the rootstock of another kind of apple. I don't understand why this helps exactly, but it does. It apparently does. Among other things, they don't like apples. I did not know this. They don't like apple trees too tall because then it's too hard to get the fruit.
Oh yeah, the dwarf varieties are like one of the most common cultivars now are the dwarf apples.
Yeah, I always thought that apple trees were just that size because they were that size. Who knew that? Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of different cultivars. In 2018, it's 86 million tons of apples were grown worldwide, with
Wow.
China accounting for nearly half. So they've kind of actually, you think, oh, China's growing all our apples. No, apples actually came from China. Yeah, they're doing what they were designed to do, sort of. The word apple is a Proto-Germanic word meaning fruit, just meaning fruit. and you still sort of use pome, for example, is the name for that kind of fruit in general. I'm not sure exactly what makes something a pome, but an apple is one. It's like a specific kind of fruit, like a drupe is peaches are drupes, I think. Peaches and plums.
Don't know.
Yeah, any botanist, Colin, correct me or confirm that if you want to. But yeah, it's used sort of still, or for a long time it's been used as a generic word for fruit. Like bananas are called apples of paradise by some people, or at least they were in the Middle Ages. So yeah, it's that's and also it's incredibly culturally important. See, in Greek and Norse mythology, there's a lot of business about golden apples, and they're what the race of Atalanta. The whole Trojan War was started by golden apples. There's somebody stealing the apples of Idun in Viking mythology. Also Judeo-Christian. That we're not supposed to use that word anymore, but it's just sort of the extent to which we've appropriated Jewish Jewish folk stories, really. But yeah, a lot of people like they're also a sexual metaphor for sexual pleasure, apparently. And it's traditional in a lot of cultures that throwing apples at people indicates that you are in love with them. Although, when
Really?
yeah. So I just have to say that when my grandpa Wood was had his 8 sons as be an agricultural picking crew and go around and pick apples and other fruits for money and vegetables in central Michigan. He did not have a lot of success with that particular seduction technique. Apparently, middle school he used to throw produce at the Mexican girls, and mostly cherries, to try and get them to like him. They did not like him. For good reason. So yeah, I'd just be very careful, trying to use that as to express your romantic interest in somebody, is all. They're probably first cultivated in the Tian Shan Mountains. Only one side of them, though. Like they looked at it, and there's no genetic contribution from the eastern side of the Tian Shan Mountains. Let's see, many species are between 4,000 and 10,000 years old. Many species are interbred with a crabapple, which is Malus sylvestris, completely different from the wild apple that they're actually descended from. But at this point, there's been so much interbreeding on their journey westward along the Silk Road to Europe that really a lot of them are more crabapple than the ones they're originally descended with in terms of morphological features, I guess. So yeah, they started to come to Europe. People think around along the Silk Road or the Silk routes. It wasn't a lot of it. The so-called roads were over water. Around between the 2nd century BC to the mid 1400s, that was going on. Oh, Christian mythology too. Yeah, a lot of biblical stories that people believe have to do with apples.
I seem to remember one with a snake involved.
Yeah, apple snakes. Yeah. So apples are this sort of desirable thing that will make you do bad things. I don't like apples that much personally. I can, if you want to tempt me to do something bad, try something that's not an apple. Maybe chocolate, but whatever. People really like apples. Pears and quince, both in the rose family. No one's really sure when grafting started. It started exactly, but apparently the Greeks and Romans and classical Europe knew how to do it. We're not sure. Yeah, they were probably cultivated in the Middle East by 3000 BC, and there was substantial production. They have evidence of that in Greece and Rome, and they knew about grafting. We're not sure if they were using just grafting exclusively, though. So that's apples. They've had a long, strange trip for such sort of a fruit that I think of as being sort of mild and wholesome and things.
Mm-hmm.
And all American apple pie. Apple pie came from Kazakhstan. It turns out.
So as Asian as apple pie.
There
I
you
guess
go.
is what
Yeah,
we should be saying.
The Central Asian.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Rebecca, for that.
You're welcome.
And now on to ecological news, and probably the biggest environmental story, which you probably haven't heard about right now, in the world is as we speak, down there in Brazil today, they're having an election.
Okay.
Right.
And
And
they have the Amazon there, so that might be important.
yes, they have the Amazon there. And Bolsonaro is the current prime minister of Brazil.
Is he kind of a jerk?
He's an incredible jerk. We've
I
reported
deeply
on,
remember that he's kind of a jerk.
yeah, we've reported on Bolsonaro many times because his policy towards the Amazon and towards the indigenous people there is just let's destroy them as fast as we can.
He thinks the entire thing would make a lovely strip mall.
Yeah, exactly, and strip mine. And,
Yes.
you know, he just wants to strip the land, et cetera,
Basically.
et cetera. So, yeah, it's Bolsonaro. His full name is Jair Bolsonaro, and he's up against a fellow named Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who, of course, nobody says that. They just call him Lula.
Right.
And Lula was actually the president just before, or the prime minister just before Bolsonaro.
Is that Ignacio like Ignatius?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ignacio. Right.
And he is a much more liberal guy who has like social policies that help the poor, you know, which Bolsonaro doesn't. It's funny because these guys like Bolsonaro.
To be fair, people in the SS were more liberal than Bolsonaro, possibly.
But people like Bolsonaro, they get in by sort of seducing the poorer parts of the society, saying,
Right.
"Oh man, you're doing terrible under Lula," you know, and then they, as soon as they get in, they get rid of the social programs that helped them
Yeah.
and make them poorer, and he has really just destroyed thousands and thousands of acres of rainforest. Some biologists thinks that Bolsonaro has already pushed the Amazon over the tipping point to where it's going to become a grassland instead of a rainforest,
Oy.
which is horrible. But
Think lots and lots of wildfires.
but right now there's the one good thing is that Lula is 15 points ahead of Bolsonaro in the polls, so it looks like it's going to be good. And when Lula was president, he really protected the forests and the indigenous people. He put tons of resources into it. Unfortunately, Bolsonaro has been called the Trump of Brazil, and following Trump's playbook, Bolsonaro has already said the election is going to be fraudulent, and unless I win by 60% or more, it's going to be a fake election.
Of course, yeah.
Which is incredibly ironic because he's the head of the government. You know, this is his own government.
Yeah, so why don't you make the election process secure and put resources into that, and then you won't have to worry.
Then you won't have to claim that it was fraudulent.
Right.
You will just know that you lost.
Right.
Fair and square. So it may turn into a crisis, but it does look like Lula is going to win this time. And that's good news for the planet and for Brazil. So fingers are crossed there. And as I said, that's happening this very day, you know, as we speak. So we'll see how it turns out.
I always thought it was sort of ironic how, you know, Trump would try to convince us stuff wasn't his fault by saying, well, that person I hired is just terrible and incompetent. And he thinks this makes him look good. Well, no, you hired you don't have good judgment, you know?
Yeah, right.
This keeps happening to you that you, accidentally, it's through no fault of your own, hired terrible and incompetent people.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, I heard an interview with Bill Gates where he said, "Oh, battery technology sucks because I invested a whole bunch of money in different battery technologies and I lost it all." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's because you don't know what kind of battery to invest in. You know,
Exactly.
That's not batteries. That's you." So, anyway, but that leads us into our next story, and this is a very sad story, unfortunately. Our friends over at globalwitness.org have published their annual list of people who've been killed, environmentalists who've been murdered because they're environmentalists, because they're trying to protect the environment.
Oh, boy.
And as you might have guessed, a ton of that happened under Bolsonaro in Brazil. There's, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 people just in the year 2021 mostly indigenous people who were trying to protect the rainforest and the lands where their tribes lived, and they would just get taken out and murdered. And it includes people like Aldenar dos Santos Macedo, Amaral Jose Stocco Rodriguez, you know, and this was a really bad year to be an environmentalist around the world. As we said, there's over 200 killed. Mexico, or Brazil is bad, but Mexico was the worst. There were 54 people killed just this past year in Mexico. And each of these people is a hero and a martyr. And I would love to be able to read all their names, but literally there's so many of them, it would, I don't have the time. But just some general things about these people that are being murdered because they're environmentalists. And it's sobering to think, Rebecca, that you and I, if we lived in one of these countries, we could make this list.
Yeah.
Just because of what we're doing, just because we have this show. And this has been going on since 2000. There have been over 1,600 people. So these are people that know people in their country are being murdered because they're environmentalists. But that doesn't stop them. They still are fighting the good fight, and they are literally fighting for us, because every time they save a forest, every time they prevent a river from getting destroyed, that physically helps us. It keeps us in a healthier planet and keeps our water cycle flowing and keeps us richer because they've managed to preserve stuff.
So, I mean, in a lot of ways, environmentalism has been portrayed as the preoccupation of wealthy white people. Well, to me, the fact that activists of color tend to get killed a lot indicates that we should get involved. We should probably listen pretty heavily to the activists of color and take some direction from them. But we should get involved because we can without dying,
Right. Yeah, we should use what we've got to help them, because they're putting literally their lives on the line. And so I'll read off the countries where people were murdered in 2021: Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Mexico. As we say, Mexico was the worst. Chile, Colombia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ecuador, Gabon, Guatemala, Honduras, India. Oh, India is bad under Modi. Oh, they're it's bad. Kenya, Mexico. Oh, there's Mexico again. Nicaragua, Peru, Philippines, Venezuela. Oh, Venezuela. That was the last one alphabetically. So even in a socialist country like Venezuela, environmental activists are being murdered. And so it again proves this is not a left-right thing. This is a survival, don't survive thing. So our sympathies to the families of these people that have been murdered, and thank you to globalwitness.org. And I'd urge you, if you care about this, go to their website. They have a whole report on it called Decade of Defiance, which came out on the 29th of September. So all right, now on to some more news, and we're racing right along here. Locally speaking, back into Ohio, the ODNR has issued a permit for an injection well in Little Hocking, Ohio. There's a story at WTAP. It was done by Laura Bowen, published on the 29th of September. And the title is ODNR Issues Permit for Injection Well in Little Hocking Amidst Pollution Fears. And essentially the people there are saying, you can't let these companies pump fracking fluids back into places that were drilled, that have like lots of drill holes in them, because once you do that, you put them in under pressure, the fracking fluid comes back up they're called orphan wells, abandoned wells that haven't been kept properly, and then they get into the groundwater and they essentially destroy the drinking water, and it's almost guaranteed to happen. And yet the ODNR gave this company, it's called Arrowhead Road Services LLC, which LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation. So So that means even if they do destroy your well water, you're not going to be able to sue them for, very much money, because that's what
Right.
limited liability means.
Oh,
They can
geez.
do whatever they want without lots of liability. And this is the time when we've got burning tap water in places that have had these injection wells. We know that they cause earthquakes, and Ohio DNR has said, oh well, we could, if this happens, then we will levy fines against that company, and they'll be required to give bottled water to the residents, and it's like, let's just not destroy
But I don't
the
want to have to take a
groundwater.
bath and bottle of water. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
People forget that this whole, the eye for an eye Hammurabi thing, Code of Hammurabi. The original intention of that was to protect the poor from the rich.
Mm-hmm.
It was saying you cannot just cheat a poor person and do something injurious to them with their money and get away with it because you have more money.
Well, the problem with destroying groundwater is it makes everybody poorer. It even makes
Yeah.
the rich people poorer.
Yeah.
So, all right, and on to our last story, though. Oh, and just one other point on the injection wells is that we have to point out that ODNR
Yeah,
is
the
actually
problem-
funded by injection well companies,
Yeah, I don't
because they have
know.
to
I'm not
pay the
too
ODNR
sure
for
about that.
permits. So, all right, so on to our last story of the show, and that is a study done by Yale Climate
It might be an,
Connections.
it might be an internet deal or
This was
something.
actually published way back in June. But driving with electric cars is much cheaper. And I just wanted to point out, I've been
Right.
watching She-Hulk, and
Oh, okay.
She-Hulk drives a
Okay.
Prius Prime. I'm just saying.
Okay, thank you.
But turns out that they did a bunch of comparisons, and driving, the comparison between charging your car with electricity and driving on that versus buying gasoline, turns out back in June it was about a third. It only cost a third as much to drive with electricity, and now the prices of gas have dropped, so that's gotten a little different, but it's still only half. So essentially, back in June, it was like, well, it's still a gallon, or a charge that's equivalent to a gallon of gasoline costs on average in the U.S. about $1.41, and now the U.S. average for gas is $3.77. So it's like getting $2.36 off of every gallon of gas every time you charge your car
Excellent.
and run on electricity. And I just wanted to do a little personal note on that. I have my solar panels, right, that charge my car, and I thought whenever I tried to charge the car directly off the solar panels, it didn't work, and I thought, oh, I must not have enough solar panels because my car charges at 7 kilowatts. I've only got 6 kilowatts. Well, sometimes, a little knowledge is more dangerous than a lot of knowledge, because it turns out that all that happened is I had my settings wrong, and somebody finally told me how to do it right. And so now, starting yesterday, I am able to charge my car directly off my solar panels, which has been like a dream for many, many years. And so these things are possible. They can happen, and all we have to do is to do them. And every time you do something, you help the whole picture.
Wasn't it Emerson who did some kind of a poem that gets quoted in Unitarian Church a lot, which is basically says, we have all the materials, knowledge, and skill and labor to make the world a paradise.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean it's very true. And there's an old Russian folk song. Oh, should I sing it? I don't know.
I don't know. Should you?
If the people live their lives as if they were a song, a singing out of light, 'twould make the music for the stars to go dancing circles in the night.
Oh, that's
Which-
pretty.
It is pretty, but basically it just tells us, if we did the things that we know we can do and stopped listening to the politicians that are trying to keep us from moving in the right direction, it would be cool.
I'm thinking a lot this week about there's a Russian folk song. Back in the Tsar's army, if you went into the army, you were in for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So, there's a story anyway that some native Slavs converted to Judaism just to get out of the Russian draft, which sounds crazy until you realize that if you come home from the Russian army, your sweetheart has married somebody else, your aged parents are dead, and probably somebody else is living in their cottage and farming their land, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, but it was a folk song. It was basically the poor little tall oak tree in the middle of the field. What will it do when the rains come with no little bushes and shrubs around it? The bushes which is referring to like a recruit who goes off into the Russian army and doesn't have his family around to protect him anymore.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. This was a highly emotional charged episode of For a Green Future. Just one final note. Our guest last week, Stephanie C., her website finally is up. So if you want, you can go look for roamfreenation.org to help the last of the wild bison in North America. All right. That's it for this show. This is Joe DeMar.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off. Well, that was an extra ranty episode.
I don't want no oil, a spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time